The EU are due to introduce a tariff on American steel in early 2025. And the US is saying, look, you need to drop that now, or we'll put tariffs in as well, and we're going to harm your trade into the US. And I think the UK can sort of ride on that wave and make progress with the American markets.
This is the Art of Freight podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Art of Freight by Trans.eu, the podcast that showcases the freight forwarding industry's remarkable ability to problem solve and innovate. I'm your host, Greg Agans, and today we have the pleasure of welcoming Geoff Yates to the show. Now, Geoff is a seasoned professional in the freight forwarding industry. He's been in the sector for well over 20 years, and he spent most of that time at UK-based Espace Global, where he currently holds the position of Commercial Director. Geoff regularly provides market updates for the benefits of the industry and is no stranger to podcasts just like this one. So hello and welcome to the show, Geoff. Great to have you on.
Likewise, great. Thank you for inviting me.
If I may, I thought I would start by asking you about your career in freight and the fact that you've spent the past 20 years at one company, at Espace.
I started my working career basically on an advert in a newspaper. Until I was 18, I wanted to be a professional cyclist. And I wasn't getting anywhere. And then my dad said, look, come on, son, it's time you got a job. I found a job at a local forwarder who were an international forwarder. And I was taken under the wing of somebody there. I think she taught me everything from filing to making tea to putting traders together. And I had really what I consider to be a proper apprenticeship, although it wasn't an apprenticeship. And then one day, Espace had an advert in the same newspaper, and I phoned up and we had a conversation with the then owner. And we sort of both left it as, I'll get back to you, you get back to me, and nothing really happened. And then one day I had a really, really bad day at my former employer, and I picked the phone up again, can I come and see you? And it was just the right time for me, right time for them. And so that was sort of my start at Espace. That was in 2004. And Espace felt like a family firm, although it hasn't been a family firm. They were two business partners who own the business, but they've always looked after staff. We've never had a culture where it's not okay to fail. If something goes wrong, what lessons have you learned? If you make a loss, what lessons have you learned? What could you do better? So Espace has really been a learning organisation. In 2016, our then owner called myself and three others into a pub. We had a meeting one evening and he said, I think I'm going to sell the business to an employee ownership trust. So all of the shares now of Espace are owned via a trust. So everybody we speak to here, I've got 41 colleagues, I think now, everybody's the part owner in that trust. And it gives everybody ownership, gives everybody responsibility. It gives you as an external person who phones in, you're speaking to an owner and somebody who's got a real interest in making that conversation work. And it can be speaking to the likes of yourselves or speaking to suppliers or speaking to customers, whoever. You're speaking to an owner. And it's somebody who's got that sort of level above what you might expect from a normal freight forwarding company.
Now let's touch on some of the learning points that you mentioned earlier. You were quite honest about the fact that it hasn't been plain sailing at all times.
Yeah.
And this is, how you develop when you're in the sector. You learn from your mistakes. So what were some of those mistakes and how have they shaped how you do business now?
Yeah, I mean, certainly from the early days, I came here for a Spanish job. Luckily for me, the guy who came for the German job didn't turn up. So I got the German markets. And I've got an affinity with Germans. So what I've always been a very strong sort of believer in is quote that business as a freight forwarder yourself. And actually you've taken that off the market, then that's now your job effectively to go and sell to the markets at however you want. And that was quite a lesson early on and started the success really. That's I'm taking a risk on these jobs, but then I know the market well in order to take the risk. So I think a lot of the sort of education has been about learning about the markets, learning about what you can and can't take. But certainly that was a very strong part of my early success, if you like, is the ability to sort of know your market, know your supply side as well. We are a middleman, so we are asset light. We don't own any assets. And certainly one of the things that I've taken as a leader is about this win-win-win. So we have to win something from a transaction. Our customers have got to win and our suppliers have got to win. So as a freight forwarder, you're nothing without your supply. So we try and make sure that our suppliers are paid well. We always pay them well. We always pay them on time. And that relationship to us is just as important as a relationship with the customer.
Now, one topic I was keen to talk to you about today is risk management, because, of course, as a freight forwarder, you're keen to avoid risk, but at the same time, some people might argue that the greatest risk is not taking any risk at all. So, how do you go about getting that balance right?
Yes, I mean, we look at risk on two levels, really. I no longer operate, but as an operator, you understand the risks of, yes, you can take this job on, you know roughly what this job's going to cost, and you can take the risk on that. So you already know your markets, and we empower all of our people. They can use who they want. We go through a quality process, of course, to onboard couriers and onboard suppliers, but we never say to somebody, you've got to use these people on that lane. It's all around relationship again. So I guess one of the big things to sort of move away from risk, it's all about relationship. And it's knowing the people that you know, making sure that you're important to them. We've never, ever, ever said you've got to use the cheapest people. And you'll only use the cheapest people once. What we've always tried to do is make sure that we've got the best people on the job, and we've got a relationship with those people. And having that relationship, I know when I operated, I could phone somebody at 8, 9 o'clock at night and I would get an answer. I was important to them. And that was really quite a big step, really, in making us the success that we are. We're important to people rather than just the people who pay the cheapest price. So, yeah, I would say that was one of the big lessons sort of learned, that we've got to be important to people. And it's not about price, as you know, it's all about relationship.
Let's focus on relationships. Relationships are seen traditionally as vital in freight forwarding, but we're also seeing now more than ever, with all the digitalization going on, optimization and the ability to book and assign freight very quickly is also important. And with that, you could say that it can sometimes feel that the relationship is a little bit stale. So how do you get the balance right between being able to maintain those relationships and an aspect of personalization while you're also using these tools?
Yeah, we've looked at this quite significantly. So we've just adopted a new TMS. We've been through a year's worth of adoption of this TMS. Right at the start, we looked at our customer journeys for all modes. So for air, sea, road, express, UK, we've been through all of the journeys there, and actually looked at what this software could do for us. You look at what Amazon's done. If you look at what Amazon's done in terms of you as a consumer, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. You place your order, you get your email, it's on its way. You get an email to say it's 8 or 9 stops away. You get your email to say it's been delivered. Here's your invoice. And all of that's amazing. But if you ever try to speak to anybody at Amazon, it's impossible to do that. So yes, we think with the new software we've got, it's very important to have those sort of digital updates. And people have become used to that now. What we believe is that the new software will give us the ability to be able to have those relationships with our clients more, to be able to pick up the phone more, to have the time to speak to them, to understand what they need, to understand what makes them tick, to go and visit them. You know, do you remember we used to go and visit people? That was incredible when we used to do that. And that's where we feel that the technology is going to give us. It's going to give us the freedom and the time to go and work on person-to-person relationships. And I read a brilliant quote a couple of years ago now, and our business is no longer about B2B. It's no longer about B2C. It's all H to H. It's human to human. It's having that connection. And again, another analogy I always use, if you're online dating, sooner or later, you've got to pick the phone up and you've got to go out and meet somebody. And that's like where you are with business. You've got to have that relationship. It can't just be online. I think if you are online, you're only ever going to get cheapest rates. And you're going to get cheapest services, and you're going to get those customers who are willing to shop for £5 or £10. But that's not the market that we're in. It's not the service that we want to give our clients. So that's really where I am on relationships, and what technology will give us actually will give us the freedom to go and do more of the things that we really like to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because there is a lot of debate about the art of freight forwarding and the human aspect of it. There are different schools of thought, let's say, about the future of freight forwarding. You've got some will say, oh, it will become extinct because of all these digital tools, automation, and so forth. And then there's the opposite school of thought whereby you'll say, no, there will be these tools, but there will always be an aspect of human interaction and communication. And that's why freight forwarding will remain and freight forwarders will always be around.
I was at a show in Warsaw in Poland this time last year, plus minus, and there was a company there, and they've got something like 80 APIs written from their own software, and it can auto match jobs which are offered to them with vehicles which are on the markets. And you can do that digitally, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But again, it's just looking at cheap and price, and I think that will always be there, and there will always be people who want the cheapest and who want the price. Likewise, there will always be people who want the service and want the hand-holding. And again, as a freight forwarder, you are that reassurance. And I know we mentioned about Brexit and just sort of passing over there. What we did at Brexit was we went back to basics. So we were called Espace Europe. That's our business name. We trade as Espace Global Freight. 90% of what we did was to and from Europe. And we'd never done customs documents. We'd never needed to do customs documents. So actually, at Brexit time, I remember coming in on the back of COVID, actually. There's myself and our then managing director in an empty office. Okay, let's learn this. Let's learn the whole thing, start to finish. What do we need to do? And then we got it. It's okay, we understand. So do our customers know? And you start to pick up phones, and we don't know. We're terrified, actually. We don't know what we're doing. Okay, so we ended up writing 2 documents. They were probably 32 pages each. We made 2 booklets. One was the Brexit Survival Guide, which I think we sent around 1,000 out. And then we sent it out digitally as well. And then after that, we did Brexit Simplified. So once Brexit had happened, sort of 6 months later, a few lessons in there and what people could be doing. And they flew off the shelves. What that gave us was the buy-in from our customers, actually, that we were willing to give them this information. And we were willing to be open with them. But actually, they wanted us to hold their hands, and they trusted us because of that. So we were quite open. We'll give you all this information. You can go and do this yourselves. And actually, what we've got now is sort of 4 years worth of relationship where they're saying, actually, we trust you. We trust you to be open with us. We trust you because you've proven yourselves and you've educated where we've needed to be. And again, we've had some amazing customs clients over the last 4 years now from virtually nothing. And that's been a real strong, again, it's about human to human. You can get all the information online, reading it yourself if you don't understand it yourself. Actually, speaking to somebody, reading what they've written, picking up the phone and having that discussion with them. And it's worked out very well for us.
You've talked quite a bit there about price, and that very much brings us on to the topic of the UK haulage market at this particular moment in time. Certainly in the last few months, I have spoken to a number of people in the industry about the situation, and what we can see certainly is a lot of companies going into administration, a lot of talk about there being some kind of race to the bottom, rates being cut to a point that it's almost impossible for hauliers to compete and even survive. What do you think about this situation, and are you concerned about a potential loss of capacity as a result of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, we work quite closely with the RHA in the UK, the Road Haulage Association, and you're right, every week we get emails that say so-and-so's gone or this is gone. And then, like you said, they're generally little ones. Then you hear about some really big hauliers who have gone. And there is this concern, of course. We've had an inflation crisis across Europe, not just the UK, a couple of years ago. That sent prices higher. But there is still this push to pay less. And it's something that we as a company can't sort of reverse ourselves. I think all we can really do is to make sure that we pay our suppliers correctly. And we know that the rates we're paying are correct. In terms of the market, I drove up to the Northwest a few weeks ago to go and see some clients. And I was shocked. So, you've been in this game for a long time. And of course, you spot trucks. Oh, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. I haven't seen them before. And there were so few trucks on the road. And it was really noticeable, actually, that there were so few European trucks. And a lot of the UK trucks were sort of liveried up, as you would expect, but the really big brands. But there just weren't that many trucks on the road. And I think in the long run, what we're going to see is a modal shift. I think we are going to see more freight moved onto rail. And certainly with electrification as well, we're going to see more electric trucks shunting from rail ports, inland rail ports, to final mile deliveries. And I think actually read in Trans.eu earlier this year about Hamburg having a massive electric substation and loads of charging points for their trucks. So they're doing the same. They've got freight coming into Hamburg port, and they're doing all of those local deliveries, if you like, on electric wagons. And I think that's where we're going to be seeing, actually, we're going to see more freight coming in at the big seaports. We're going to see more short sea crossings, but we will see a bigger use of rail. And I think I can see hauliers doing less mileage, but perhaps getting paid more for it because it is such a a short shunt rather than the long distances they're used to driving.
There do appear to be some challenges in the UK when it comes to bringing about the kind of modal shift that we'd be looking for, certainly with regards to infrastructure. So do you just feel that the infrastructure challenges are just simply too much to bring about the kind of modal shift that we really want?
My colleague and I were down in Whitehall for a government roundtable last year, and we were talking rail, actually. What can we do to sort of aid this modal shift? And there's a lady there who was the lead of a rail organisation. She was saying actually the HS1 and HS2 aren't joined up, they're on different gauges. So actually you can get freight from Europe into Kent, and it's got to come off a train in Kent to go on to different trains to go elsewhere. And that seemed so short-sighted. Actually, we're going through all of this heartache with HS2. I'm sure you can tell from my accent, I'm from the Midlands. There's so much farmland here being dug up, but actually it's not suitable for purpose in some respects. And it was one of the big crew automakers at this same meeting, and they said that we would happily accept freight on the rail if you could get it to us. So I think it's very much an infrastructure thing. I think it's going to be too late to convert HS2 now. That's, they've agreed what they've agreed. But I think that was very short-sighted, to be perfectly honest. That we have this massive opportunity to move freight, European freight, inland. And it's not just European now. Obviously, all the big seaports, Rotterdam, Hamburg, crossing Poland. You've got the Silk Line coming in from China in through Belarus when you used to be able to through Poland. But you've got freight coming halfway across the world on rail that you can't really move inland from the UK. I think that was a big mistake, I've got to say, in terms of infrastructure when you're going through all of this heartache and introducing infrastructure.
Okay, let's move on. Yeah, so your role actually is as commercial director. I see that commercial directors, lots of different things that you need to weigh up, not just in terms of making money, but also making decisions that represent the company as a whole. That, for example, there could be relationships that you have that can generate a lot of profit, but they may not be very good for your sustainability targets and all of these kind of things. So what would you say is the toughest aspect of being a commercial director in a freight forwarding company at this time?
Yeah, I think just to move on from that, just to find a little bit first, but we did our business planning a couple of years ago with a chap, and we had a really good discussion actually around ethics. And being employee-owned, again, we have a very strong ethic here. We had the discussion about what do you move, what are you willing to move, and what aren't you willing to move. This guy wasn't in logistics, so he didn't know. And we said, oh, guns are absolute no. We wouldn't move guns. It doesn't suit us. It's not our business. And he said, well, what about guns for Russia? Absolutely not. No way. Okay. So what would you do if you were moving guns for NATO or for Ukraine? Okay. So we had this it's quite a long talk actually on ethics and what we believe ethically. And we got very, very strong DNA here and very strong in terms of ethics. So yes, we do want to move with the markets, and we do want to lead the markets in terms of sustainability. Again, as a forwarder, you're sort of limited to buying people's services. So I think what we can do and what I want to do in terms of commercial activity is to push the carbon measurements, make sure that our customers have the option to buy different freight. So it might, currently it's people would look at transit time and cost, of course. In the very near future, people will be looking at carbon as well. So if you can send a box or a box as in a container out to Italy, and it's going to cost you 5, 6, 7 tons carbon less, that then becomes an option. So that's what we've really got to look at now, and where we are going to sort of point the business in terms of sustainability is making sure that people have the options. Then we want to make sure that we're able to measure that and report that for people. And on the back of there, I think, again, I touched on the Brexit education piece. I think CBAM is going to be the biggest issue that many supply chain managers will have in the near future. One of our big clients for a tier one at one of the big auto manufacturers in the Midlands, or the big one, they've spoken to 6 different CBAM experts, and they've gone down to such a granular level. They're talking to people who make ingots, which goes into parts in goods. And I think CBAM will be a big issue for many people and many people's supply chains. And certainly we've had a hand in porting in Europe, and we want to try and make that process, once it's understood and once it's sort of defined here in the UK, making that as easy as possible for our customers to understand. So that's where I think we'll see an awful lot of my time being spent over the next year in particular. Actually understanding what the government's going to want from CBAM. So I believe it will be different from the EU. understanding how we can make that reporting easier for our customers, and then of course making sure that we can do the reporting for them. And on the back of all of this, we want to be able to offset carbon. I think one of our dreams really is to make that offset sort of not reality, it's sort of plausible. Can we do that in the UK? So you can actually go out and have a picnic in a nice field that's been planted with trees, or is that something we're able to do and make it actually make it real for somebody? So I think some of the big issues we see in terms of buying offsets, you're buying a project halfway around the world, and effectively what you're buying is a certificate to make yourself sort of compliant. Well, we want to try and make it a bit more than that. And actually, you might be supplying something for something local that you can go and enjoy with the kids at the weekend. And that's where we would love to be able to go. Of course, it's up to the market and what the market's willing to allow us to do, really.
One of the things that you have quoted of, I've got this here, it was the lovely quote where you said, a good forwarder will be able to move your freight around the world in a way you would struggle to do as efficiently yourselves without hiring the expertise. And also a great forwarder will also look to build relationships with you, find ways to save you money, and add efficiencies and innovation to your supply chain. It really is a win-win relationship. So people would typically think about the former. That would be no surprise that, that they have an ability to move things around and handle things like customs, but efficiencies and innovation, that may not necessarily always be the case. And I suppose that brings into question what the responsibilities of a freight forwarder should be and how wide that scope should be. So what do you think about that?
I've written about this before, but if you were an exporter, you might be sending 1 to 5 consignments a week. Here, we're moving 10 a day each. So all of a sudden, we've got an awful lot of volume going out through our desks here. So maybe 400 loads a week. Each of those loads, we have a relationship with the people who want them, and so they want it delivered on a particular day, or they want it going a particular route for security, or they want to try and avoid France on the weekend to make it a bit cheaper. And it's all of those sorts of learnings that you can offer your clients. So it's not a one size fits all. It's not that we've got X amount of trucks. That's when they're full, they're full. We're a freight forwarder. We've got relationships with people. So our ability to go and load 10, 20 lap vans tomorrow is greatly above than a standard haulier would be able to do. So I think that's the sort of thing that we can offer our customers. In terms of innovation, at Brexit, our value as a freight forwarder totally changed. So a haulier will move goods from A to B, and a freight forwarder will do the 1, 2, 3, 4 in between. So actually, you're taking an awful lot of the headache away from clients, and they're quite happy to do that. We've got, as I say, relationships that have lasted 25 years, and I had a meeting actually just last week. A chap came in here from a customer. So I know how to do the customs ourselves. I just don't know how to answer the questions when it gets really difficult. And for him, paying us to do that and have us answer those questions for him was almost priceless. So actually, your £40 for a customs declaration is worth every penny to them. And that's what we want to try and do. We're forever learning. There's always something different to do. It's never just a set way. And actually, you might have a customer call tomorrow and asking us to load something in a certain way. And that could be something that another customer of ours has never thought about. So actually, that's a conversation as us as experts could offer to somebody. Actually, if you load it around this way, you could get X amount more freight on. So that's what we try and do in terms of sort of innovation and efficiency, is making the value for money as good as possible.
When you think about a company like Espace, what is the hardest day-to-day challenge that you guys experience?
I don't think in terms of moving freight around, we would have many issues. Certainly project cargo and those really big moves would be something we would look to push out. We did move a 100-ton boiler, and our then managing director said he would never, ever touch it again. His mortgage went up and down several times in the space of a month. That would be something we would probably move away from and try and farm out to somebody else, or recommend somebody to go and who would do that. Certainly in terms of big moves, I've moved aeroplane wings for fighter jets at 15 meters long, 4.5 meters wide. And that's part of the daily challenge of what we do. And all of those are really fun. But the really, really big stuff, can you tow an oil rig down from the north of Scotland? That's not for us. But that's about relationship. And what I would do in that instance is reach out to our network, and our network would probably put us in touch with somebody who would be able to do that. And I think what we've really found after Brexit is that us as forwarders have really come together. There's plenty out there for everybody. There is plenty of room for everybody. And there's been this very real sort of movement in terms of, let's try and help each other out a bit. And this last year has got a bit more difficult as the world markets have been difficult. I still think that's very much a strong element of freight forwarding.
Now, I think we can perhaps end the show by looking into 2025. I noticed that you just published a piece actually about the possible impacts of the new Trump administration coming in a few months' time. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation about that and the impact of tariffs. You mentioned also about the possibility of a UK trade deal and the possible advantages of that. And then at the same time, of course, we're seeing a lot of protectionism, irrespective of Trump. So where do you think the UK is going to go? Because we don't really know at the moment whether they will decide to have a little bit more alignment with the European Union or try to do something with the new US administration.
I was actually just yesterday, I was down in London at the Chartered Institute of Import and Export on their annual meeting. And there's quite a lot of discussion on trade and Trump and what's happening. And the word from Whitehall is that the Keir Starmer government, the Labour government, wants to have their cake and eat it. They do want a better alignment with the EU, which we would welcome, of course. We still have a lot of freight moving to and from. That wouldn't make customs any easier, but it would allow trade to be easier, which is a really good thing. But they also want to be involved with America and with Trump. And I believe if there is a tariff, the EU and the US have had rocky relations in the recent past. The EU are due to introduce a tariff on American steel in early 2025. And the US is saying, look, you need to drop that now, or we'll put tariffs in as well, and we're going to harm your trade into the US. And I think the UK can sort of ride on that wave and make progress with the American markets. And I also believe that our alignment with the EU will get closer. I think one of the big moves we're going to see in the sort of next 10 years is supply chain visibility. And I've been doing some work on the single trade window in the UK. And of course, there's single trade windows all the way around the world now. And one of the cases I've read and I've written about is about processed cheese from France. So of course, you need a VES certificate now to bring stuff in of animal origin. Actually, these guys are saying, well, if we use milk from the same farms, it's brought in on the same wagons, it's processed in the same factory using the same processes, it goes out on the same trucks, it goes into the same place. Why do we need to prove that one load of cheese is any different from another? I think that's a really good test case, actually. Yes, you come and look at them. They're there if you want to look at them, but why have we got to go through this process every time? And I do think we might see some companies being allowed to move towards digitized trade, and you'll be able to report on, this is what I've brought in this year, this is what I'm going to pay on import VAT, this is what I owe on duties. And I think we will see with more visibility a move to trusted trader statuses. And I think that will enable trade right the way around the world. There's some really big single trade windows already up and running. I think Canada's got one. I think New Zealand have one, and the EU and the UK are also looking at them. And I think that will be a big step forwards in terms of increased trade.
Well, it's certainly something positive to end on because, as we've been discussing, there are quite a lot of fears of protectionism. Certainly, we can see a little bit's a bit of an understatement. Some geopolitical difficulties at the moment when it comes to trade. So any possible boost to global trade can only be seen as a positive. So thank you very much, Geoff, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. All the best.
Thanks for listening or watching. Follow our socials to catch every episode.